And hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me, my awesome co-host and more,
Stephen F. Masick is here.
my husband, a medium, an attorney, and my amazing co-host. And Stephen, let's start with the reality that today was supposed to be your show.
It was,
And
as it always is, right? The last Friday of the month.
always. And you graciously gave it to me because I came down with a stomach bug last week and literally just couldn't do the show. And it was last minute, and you thought, oh, you didn't get to do your show, so I'm gonna just give you my spot. And you're very kind, very kind,
I'm a
and I
sweetheart.
appreciate it. You
I'm
are,
a sweetheart.
you
That's
are.
what it's all about. Well, you missed two weeks.
Yes, that's why you were like, we have. I'm
Exactly.
gonna give you my spot so that we can have an amazing show, which we have planned an amazing show because today, Stephen, and this is your idea. You decided, hey, let's just do an open forum. Let's have a real talk about real life, real talk about real life. And, and for me, because Steven and I are so different, Steven just doesn't really, you don't really plan anything. You just like to just go very organic and just go with the flow. Me, on
Yeah,
the other hand, I have to have everything planned, everything in front of me. So every time I do a show, my assistant always creates a show plan for me, so I know exactly where we're going, what we're doing, where we are, blah blah blah. And you were like, no, let's just do an open forum. So we don't have a subject. We're just gonna talk about life.
You know what, Elix? It reminds me a couple of years ago when we were the officiates for very, very good friends of ours, and when we were waiting for the ceremony to start, and we were already, in the venue. It was beautiful. It was outside. It was July. I don't know if you remember this, but you looked at me like, where are your notes? Because you were holding your notes of what you were going to say. I'm like, what notes?
Yeah. Yeah. See, me, I just couldn't. I would have a nervous breakdown, an anxiety attack, just thinking, how am I going to get through this? I just need to have notes. No, I don't necessarily,
That's okay.
look at them, or it's like they're like my little security blanket.
Oh, I mean,
But
listen, everyone's got to do what works for them, right?
exactly.
It's
But
what
to
it's all about.
Exactly. But anyways, today it's going to be an open, real, unfiltered conversation. To be honest with you, our conversations are always unfiltered. And it's going to be about relatable topics. But at the end of the day, ultimately, Get a Grip with Coach Helix is about topics that can help you and all of us thrive and live a fulfilling life.
Yes.
So that's what we aim for. Now, if you want to have anything that you want to talk about, you have any questions, you can always join the conversation by calling 508-222-1320.
And I think that's a great opportunity because the two of us come from such different places. And so that there's so much to talk about, right?
Yeah, we have very different perspective. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's really what makes it work. I mean, we're literally celebrating next weekend or next week. We celebrate our 32-year anniversary. As a matter of fact, we are going to NYC, one of our favorite cities in the world, to celebrate. And so after I could say with plenty of confidence that the fact that we're yin and yang, the yin and the yang, right? I don't know. Does that make sense? Listen, people, sometimes I make stuff up and I don't even know where it comes from. The yin and the yang. I think that's the same. Mark, our producer, can you look that up?
No,
please?
it is
And
yin and
am I-
yang, but not yang and yang. I mean, you completely did a Puerto Rican accent on that.
Well,
yin and
I
yang.
think people who are listening, they know where I'm going. My point is that we're definitely very different. We operate in a very, very different way, but different doesn't mean better or worse or good or bad. It just means different, and we both make it work, and we have. So I think people are going to be loving this conversation.
Well, you know what? After almost 32 years, Elix, even in the last 2 weeks, both of us, there was one particular experience I'm thinking of when we were downstairs in the living room, and after we had a particular conversation, I know both of us were thankful the way we really saw the other's perspective and just made it work, made the conversation easier to sort of communicate and make sure that we knew what each other was thinking and feeling and listening. And that's after 32 years. So it's a constant thing, regardless of how long you've been together, married, with somebody. It's just, it's all about just making yourself better and better and better, and being vulnerable enough to go to those places that you need to sort of deconstruct because they're not benefiting you. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And listen, in my line of business, I mean, I'm an executive coach. I am coaching people, whether it's in business, in their personal lives, but ultimately I coach them to step into being the best version of themselves. And often people come to me thinking that I know how to be the best version of myself all the time. In that, I'm almost like they look at me as, well, you're perfect, you don't have any faults, and it's so, Stephen, it's so far from, that is so far from what's real. Actually, I'm so not perfect. I make left turns all the time. My goodness, I have breakdowns all the time. I mean, Stephen probably has a laundry list of all my imperfections. But what I think it's important, what I've learned, and I think that's part of what you and I have done really well for each other, is I've learned to catch it in real time and then correct it, do my best to correct it in real time, so that we're not holding on to the boulder, if you will, pretending we're not holding on to anything, but we are for like days or hours, days, months, years, and so on. So I think that is one of the things that I've learned. Listen, we have to, and I also
Elix, can I just pause you for a second, because
Sure.
I think the live is off.
I don't.
It was on, but it's not live on YouTube and Facebook, or at least on Facebook. It's not live anymore. So people that may be watching or so, it was, but it looks like now it's sort of off because it's already showing like views and a comment and.
Okay. Okay.
In any case, maybe Mark can just check it out.
Mark,
also.
check it out. I do have, actually, so this could have been before it went off, but I do have a question, and this is from Phil.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is still live.
So one of the questions, and we can take this on, when we come back from the break, Stephen. I just want to say it so that in the event that we lose the live, I actually think we're on, Stephen, because I just
Hey, don't go by me. I'm half my life I'm in with the dead people. So I'm saying.
Well, so long you're not dead, that's really what matters. But listen, we do have. Let me have this question. No. So we are still live. So I just got confirmation from somebody in the live that we are still live. So
Sorry.
Phil is on the live feed, And she says, I have a question for each of you. What do you consider has been the biggest challenge you've ever encountered in your life, and how did you overcome it? Or how did you overcome it? That's a pretty loaded question, Stephen. So, we let's take it after we come back from the break. And by the way, if there's anyone else who has questions like that or any other kind of question, you can, if you're on the live feed, you can put it in the live feed. We definitely look at it. Or you can call us 508-222-1320. This is really one of a kind of opportunity to really speak life to Stephen and myself. But I actually, I'm processing the question, Stephen.
It is.
That's
It is. It's an amazing question. Not surprising because I know the source and who's asking the question, so it doesn't surprise me. But it is definitely. It's a beautiful question because it really starts making you think about your whole life within a second, right? It starts making you think, oh my God, what the biggest challenge? And like it just starts lining up of which one would be the biggest.
Yeah, I'm gonna go deep, people. I'm telling you that right now. So fasten your seatbelts because I can only answer that question by just really just going deep and just putting it all out there.
How can you say fasten your seatbelt with and then just dropping it without saying it's going to be a bumpy night? Just saying. With
Is
Betty
it?
Davis. How is that possible?
Well, first of all, because I don't watch the same movies that you watch, so I have no idea where that reference comes from. Give me a Seinfeld reference or a Golden Girl reference, I'll get it. But Betty Davis, are you serious? I mean, you know that when you're watching old movies, I usually just look at you, look at the TV, and then I do a U-turn.
Yeah, you meaning you fall asleep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. For the most part, I do sit with you, but I don't have the same interest
Oh,
in
those
old
old movies
movies.
are like the best.
Even though I will say I do somehow I do have an interest in in old shows because I am fascinated by the Lawrence Welk show. I mean fascinated. I think there's some level of creepiness to it, but I'm still fascinated by the show itself. I don't know, something about it,
Good
something about
night.
just those old
Sleep
nights.
tight and pleasant dreams to you.
So
We are a little crazy watching them, but you know what? That was also connected to not only like growing up as a little boy. My father had that on every single Saturday night because they always played a polka, and you know the polka being Polish, and then when your mom was living, every Sunday night we would that was our thing. We'd go downstairs to the apartment and watch Lawrence Welk with her.
and she loved it. She
She
loved it.
loved it so much.
By the way, Stephen, shout out to Susan Dame. She's actually watching or listening to the live.
Croaksies. Hi,
Yeah,
Croaks.
Croaksy. So anyway, so listen, we have to take a pause for a break, but when we come back, we're gonna
Get ready,
continue.
Phil.
Yeah, get ready. Fasten your seatbelt. It's gonna be a bumpy night. We're gonna have an open forum, real talk, real live, and it's gonna be an unfiltered conversation. And we are gonna bring relatable topics that will help you thrive and live a fulfilling life. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co-host,
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen the Medium, who is an attorney, and my amazing husband, and my amazing other half. And today we are having an open forum, so we don't have a topic in particular. So this is real talk about real life. And how we got to this is because, over the past few days, we've been living often in uncertainty, fear, and even moments of hopelessness. And today, this is a really great opportunity to create a space to discuss anything that truly matters to us, to you, to the people that you love. So we're going to explore together ways to thrive, to heal, and find strength and push forward in a way that may leave you at the end of today's show feeling better than how you started. So, how about that? I just made that up, Stephen, as we were talking.
That is just incredible.
So, anyways, Stephen, so there, I want to do another shout out. So we have Sandy Kagan, our friend Sandy, who you already have plans for some afternoon tea and honey and
wine, Elix,
and wine and vegetables.
Wine. So I can't wait to see them.
She's listening. Wait. Sandy, we love you.
In Virginia too.
In Virginia, and we're waiting. I can't wait for your honey. I just cannot wait. And but anyway, so let's go back to the question from Phil. Phil is listening. She's on the feed, the live feed, and she's from Canada, Toronto area, I believe. And her question is, what do you consider has been the biggest challenge you've encountered in your life, and how did you overcome it? So, pretty deep question. So, Stephen, go ahead.
No. Hey, listen. You just said you're going deep. I want to hear it. So does everybody else. So you start this.
I think for me, okay. So it's just like a really, I had to really go in, right? Like really dive deep for me to think about this. The biggest challenge. So listen, there's so many challenges. I was 18, and nobody in my family shared that with me. But we've talked about that, been there, done that. So I'm going to talk about something that you and I have been exploring recently, Stephen, which is the letting go of the old narrative that I created from being a young child. And, it's a narrative that I created because of my experiences as a kid, my life back then, my surroundings, and I as a young boy who experienced tremendous trauma, I made up some narrative about myself. I'm not worth it. I'm not worth enough, right? And sometimes that sounded like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not this enough. You could put a blank. And that narrative has been like, in many ways, it has served me because in many ways, everything that I am today, it's because I was out to prove from very early on that, you know what, I'm going to prove to the world, to everyone, that I am indeed better than, right? But the problem, Stephen, is the bad news about feeding a narrative like that is that no matter how much you achieve, and in my case, we have an amazing life. I've done tremendously well, and everything that I set out to do, I did, and I did well. But the problem was that no matter what, it was always on top of, but I'm still not good enough. I'm still not worth. And you began to see that narrative in action because in our relationship, you often notice when I was sort of like putting myself second to everything else. And you were the one that said to me, well, that doesn't work, right? Because it's like when, like when you take that plane ride and they telling you about the instructions. If you lose altitude, you got to put the oxygen mask on you first before you try to help anyone else. Well, in life is the same. You got to apply the oxygen mask on you first, and I wasn't. So I was living a life trying to help others, but I was never doing anything for myself. I was putting myself secondary, always secondary, always secondary. And that presented tremendous challenges for me. And that has been very, very hard to break because it is a narrative that I fed my entire life. Now, mind you, I do recognize today as an adult, and of course, all the work that I've done, and in my career, I've got to really look deep because how can I possibly coach people to be the best version of themselves when I'm not willing to do the same, right? But and it is ongoing. I can tell you, I have breakdowns all the time. There are times where I just say, "Oh my God! Like, how could I fail at that? How did I miss that? How did I not see that? How?" And it is challenging because I find myself making myself so wrong and being so hard on myself, and how I overcome it. So it's an ongoing process, and I'm blessed to have Steven, as my partner in life because Steven, the two of us are like in this journey, sort of like parallel journey, working with each other. So you help me see sometimes what I'm not able to see for myself, and then you remind me, hey, you're doing that thing again. But for me, is the challenge and how I'm overcoming it is just bringing self-awareness so that I can start learning to make those corrections in real time. Again, remember, this thing was made up as a young boy. So that young boy, it's like that young boy wants to take charge because that's all that he knew. That's the way he survived my entire life. And again, without going into specifics of, a lot of the trauma, but, and by the way, I mean, I'm very transparent about the trauma. Some of the trauma that I experienced was, being physically, abused by my dad when I was a young boy. So in order for me to survive that, I had to come up with mechanisms that I felt would protect me from what I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be hit again, or I'm going to be hurt again, or I'm going to be, spoke down again. So I had to come up with those mechanisms to protect myself, but those mechanisms are not serving me today. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Of course.
So that, I don't know, Phyllis, if that is, if I that's the best way I can possibly answer that today. It's an ongoing for me.
I think that was extremely clear, Elix, and to be able to get there, it just also just obviously means that you have that awareness, as you just mentioned, and the awareness of always wanting to get better and better and better.
Yeah. So bottom line is, listen, I am as imperfect is, but I'm committed to being the best version, even when I'm imperfect. Still be the best version of myself. So how would you answer that question, Steve?
I love that. Listen, I think I have like a minute, so I think I need to.
Well, you don't. You can start, and then when we come back, you can continue. So go ahead. No rush.
I really would hate to do that because, me, I'm very consistent, and starting within a minute, then I got to stop, and I'm just. Can you
Well,
tell I'm just filling the time?
you know what we can do is we can tell our producer Mark, if he's prepared. Let's take a break,
Yes, Marky.
and then when we come back, Steven is going to answer Phyllis' question, and then Lisa Volp Hacky, I believe, has another question. So Lisa, after Steven answers Phil's, will take on your question. Thank you all for listening and for throwing questions at us. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex, and with me, my amazing co-host,
Stephen Frederick.
Stephen Frederick, Stephen the Medium, also my husband. And today we have an open forum. We are real talk about real life, and we've been answering Phyllis' question from Canada. And the question is, what do you consider has been the biggest challenge you've encountered in your life, and how did you overcome it? So, Stephen,
Yes.
take it from there.
As we talked about, I think this is a very interesting question that really makes you think. And I was trying to go to the highest level of what would be my biggest challenge. And, I think my biggest challenge has been finding what my biggest challenge is and what my real challenges are throughout life. I mean, I think that was the biggest challenge, because there's days, many, many days, that I had constant challenges throughout the day, just of how I felt about myself and where I was in the world. And getting through it was, crossing my fingers the next morning I was going to be breathing and waking up and getting through whatever that previous day, I experienced. But as I kept going forward, I started realizing that nothing was changing. And I then, at some point, many, many years later, not that far ago, started really understanding and thinking. And it was really because of finding out I was a medium and speaking to spirit and doing readings and getting to talk to dead people like every day and sharing those experiences with the people that are in front of me, and just getting all those like little golden nuggets from spirit and talking to their loved ones that I'm privy to hear about. And I started realizing that the reason why things are not changing the way I want them to is because how can I be resolving or getting over a challenge that I don't even know what the challenge actually is? I was getting those very superficial, high-level challenges and not understanding that underneath was this whole sort of underground, like where the challenges started, the roots of the challenge, if you will. And that really still a challenge, because I'm in the process of doing, the inventory of underground and seeing, not just pulling if you just snap a weed up from the ground and you don't get the roots, the weed's going to come back. And that's what was happening to my life for many, many years. So understanding that I needed to really find out what the root of where the root of the challenge was, is I think my biggest challenge. And how I resolved it is actually what I'm doing right now, a work in progress of actually pulling those roots out of the ground and then looking at them and saying, oh my God, that's what I need to work on. That's what I need to focus on. And that's what I'm presently doing. So
that is pretty awesome, Stephen, because I think everyone, that's like almost what you did in explaining what your biggest challenge is, Stephen. You're giving all of us also a tip of something that we all should be doing. We should all be looking for those roots, because we all have them, and unfortunately, I think we just keep living life as with a very messy garden, if you will.
And that's why, Elix, and I really did. I mean, I have to give like so much credit to Spirit and the dead people that I talk to all the time, is that I got that from them and started understanding that so many people live their lives and they don't understand why it's not getting better, or why they're stuck in this particular place or this relationship or this job or whatever the case may be, not understanding that everything is connected, and that if you're only pulling out and making your garden like visually look pretty by just pulling out the weeds on the top level, underneath is chaos, and that chaos is just going to keep coming and coming and coming with those weeds until you actually dig so far deep. And let me tell you, just like the analogy shows, is that it's time consuming, it's tiring, it's wanting to pull your hair out when you have to get in and pull those roots that are so strong in there, but at the end of the day, when you do that and you get down into that underground, sort of root factory, then you look at the garden every day, and every day it looks the same, and there's no surprises. There's none of those ugly heads popping up anymore. So,
yeah, but if Stephen, if you think about that metaphor, right? Let's say you have a vegetable garden, if you allow the weeds to overgrow, your vegetables are not going, your garden is not going to it's not going to produce the same fruit, right?
of course.
So you have to take care of the weeds in order to allow for the fruit to grow and for you to have beautiful flowers or beautiful vegetables. So I think life is exactly the same. You got to pay attention to the weeds.
It is. That's why I thought it was a great analogy. And there's even little shortcuts you can take in getting some, toxins or formulas from stores that you just spray on, or pellets or so. And believe me, I've been gardening for a long time, and that is not a permanent solution. It certainly helps big time, but it's not permanent. And the only thing that's permanent is getting those roots. And once you figure that out, then you get to work and everything starts changing, everything starts shifting in your world, and I mean everything. So
Yeah, I so appreciate that, Stephen. Um, Actually, so let me read you what Lisa Volp Hackey wrote, and then she actually even said that listening to you was really good advice for what her question is, which makes perfect sense. So Lisa says, dealing with uncomfortable situations head on is very difficult for me, and in living a lie, I self sabotage. So, for example, I'm assuming she talks about drinking wine, eating foods. What are some steps that I can take to start to deal with the problem? And so, I think what you said it's an effective way to also deal with that, which is to look at what is the root, right? Look at the root of what that's the source of that causing her to feel that way. What else
yeah,
would you say, Stephen?
yeah,
Please.
I would say, Lisa, thank you for the question. I love Lisa. I see her on social media all the time. And between her and Phyllis, thank you both for giving the questions. But I think that you can still use that analogy when Lisa says, she's not good with uncomfortable situations. And what happens when you, using the same garden analogy, that you don't pull out these weeds from the roots, and that they just keep growing back, and then you just get so tired and say, you know what, I'm just going to let it go. And then when you pull up, or leaving in the morning, or pull up in the afternoon, and if your garden is right front and center in your yard, what do? You don't look at it. It's too uncomfortable to look at because they're all weeds. You didn't resolve it. You didn't fix it, and so you just kind of turn your head and say, yeah, I'll get to it the next day. And I think that analogy, Lisa, is the same exact way to sort of go after whatever you're dealing with too, is to figure out, what's the root cause of that feeling of being uncomfortable.
I want to add to that from a different perspective. There's a distinction, there's a framework that I use in my coaching, Lisa, and anyone listening, because when we talk about discomfort, Robin Sharma came up with this framework. He calls it the 6 rules of learned bravery. And what he argues is that in order to deal with discomfort, we have to learn bravery, right? And bravery, it's something that can be learned. Now, being brave, it's not the absence of fear, because fear is part of our humanness. So fear is always going to be there. Being brave is taking action in even when we're afraid, in the face of fear. So what he talks about, the 6 rules, and I use this all the time for myself, for my clients, for others. Rule number 1 is find your mighty why. Stephen and I talk about this all the time. What's your purpose? What fuels your vision? And really be crystal clear as to what that is for you. Because when you use that mighty why to fuel who you are and how you respond to the situations, that is just, it's a really good way to empower yourself, even when you find yourself in situations where you're uncomfortable and you're uncomfortable. Then rule number 2 is take off the mask, stop pretending, be authentic. So when you know that you are uncomfortable, so you pretend something else, and you're being inauthentic, practice not doing that. Practice really acknowledging, wait a minute, I'm going to stop that pretense. And be willing to acknowledge fear. Number 3, it's install the plumbing of optimism. Like really learn, and again, these are practices. Stephen and I talk about this all the time. Learn to practice gratitude every day. That is part of that plumbing of optimism. Learn to have it favoring those, or savoring those moments, those simple blessings that we all have every day in life. a big one, stop comparing yourself with anyone else. That comparing yourself with somebody else is always an unwinnable strategy. And surround yourself by really people that inspire you, that feel make you want to feel better, do better, and be better. Seek out discomfort, number four, and do things that really frighten you. So learn to practice, some of those things that are uncomfortable, and seek them out. And just, it doesn't have to be major things, but we all have those little things that we don't do because they make us uncomfortable. The more you practice, the better you get at it. Number five is partner with willpower, develop self-discipline, and self-discipline starts with things like exercise, medication, sleep, eating better, all of that stuff. And then last one, number six, is create a circle of courage. He argues, you never rise higher than your associations, and ain't that the truth? So surround yourself with people that are gonna encourage you, inspire you, and make you be better, be the best version of yourself. So that's, Lisa, I hope that helps you, because this is a tool also that I use all the time. What do you think, Stephen?
I mean, those tools are amazing, and they're so applicable. I mean, I will say, though, like, even the do something that makes you uncomfortable. I think for myself, for my entire life, one thing that makes me so uncomfortable that I never did was going to a restaurant by myself out to eat. And listen, and I've done it, but I think that it's not just solely about doing something that's uncomfortable. I can do it. I've done it. Walk out. Yes, I did it. Did that change the feeling that I want to do it again? No, it didn't. For me anyway, I needed to really pull those roots out and figure out, why is it making me uncomfortable? What am I putting in my brain